In moments that define history, time doesn't tick, it explodes. It's not gradual, it doesn't whisper, it roars. One morning, the world stood still as headlines screamed. Israel's defenses collapsed in minutes, and not hours. Not days, minutes, the kind of collapse that turns strategy into rubble and certainty into dust. It wasn't just a military shift. It was a psychological earthquake, a tactic so swift, so precise, so unexpected, that it stunned even the most battle-hardened strategists. But this isn't a speech about war. It's about what happens when the unimaginable becomes real. It's about the human response to crisis. Because in that moment of global shock, buried beneath the political headlines, lies a deeper question. What happens when everything you rely on, everything that once protected you suddenly fails? Body unpacking the lessons we all build defenses. Personally, professionally, nationally, some of them are visible. Walls, systems, routines. Others are invisible. Beliefs, assumptions, habits. They protect us from harm, from failure, from fear. But what if the very thing we trusted the most is what makes us vulnerable? When Israel's defenses fell, it wasn't due to weakness. It was due to predictability. They had built a fortress for yesterday's war, but the enemy evolved fast, quietly, creatively. That's the lesson. Innovation doesn't wait for permission. Disruption doesn't knock before it breaks the door. And the greatest threat isn't always the strongest enemy. It's the one you never saw coming. When we become too comfortable, we start to assume that what worked yesterday will work tomorrow. We cling to routines, systems, and habits that once served us, believing they will always protect us. But comfort is deceptive. It lulls us into a false sense of security. It tells us we're safe when, in reality, we're becoming stagnant. Over time, comfort creates walls around our thinking. It narrows our vision. It silences the part of us that wants to explore, experiment, and evolve. And while we're busy holding on to the familiar, the world outside is shifting. Fast, quietly, relentlessly, greatness doesn't live inside the boundaries of what's familiar. It exists just beyond the edge of what feels safe. The leaders, the innovators, the resilient ones, they don't wait for the ground beneath them to shake. They go out and find new ground. They challenge themselves, not because they want discomfort, but because they understand what's at stake when they don't. The people who break records, build empires, or change the direction of their lives don't rely on what's always worked. They ask, what's next? They seek growth even when nothing is forcing them to. That's where the transformation begins, not in times of crisis, but in the moments when nothing seems wrong, yet they still choose to grow. Comfort is seductive because it feels good. It feels earned. It tells you you've done enough. You've worked hard. Now you can relax. But life doesn't stop moving forward just because you paused. The world doesn't freeze because you decided to take it easy. The danger of comfort isn't in the resting. It's in the forgetting how you got where you are, forgetting the hunger that pushed you forward, forgetting that progress was never meant to be permanent. It's something you earn every day, over and over again. When you get too comfortable, you stop preparing. You stop imagining what could go wrong. You stop pushing boundaries, and it's in that space, when your guard is down and your assumptions are high, that collapse happens. Not because you're weak, not because you're incapable, but because you trusted stability more than you trusted growth. The lesson is never that comfort is wrong. It's that relying on it is dangerous. You can enjoy it, but you can't build your future around it. Because the world rewards those who remain aware, those who stay sharp, those who never assume they've arrived. Every major fall in history, personal, professional, or political, can usually be traced back to a single source. Someone got comfortable. They stopped evolving. They trusted that what they had built would be enough to survive whatever came next, and they were wrong. The real danger wasn't the enemy outside, it was the silence inside, the silence that comes when we no longer question, no longer stretch, no longer strive for more. Comfort convinces you that tomorrow will be just like today, that you can coast without consequence, that stability is success. But in a world that's constantly moving, comfort is the slowest form of decline. Predictability is often mistaken for strength. It gives people the impression that you're consistent, disciplined, and in control. But in reality, predictability can become a silent weakness, the kind that no one sees until it's too late. When your actions, thoughts, and responses follow the same pattern day after day, you become easier to read, easier to anticipate, easier to outmaneuver. And in a world that thrives on change and movement, being predictable isn't stability, it's exposure. When systems are too rigid, they crack. When people are too consistent in the wrong ways, they become vulnerable. Predictability breeds complacency, and complacency creates blind spots. The most dangerous threats in life rarely come from the front. They come from the sides, from places you weren't looking because you assumed your defenses were strong enough. That's the trap of predictability. It lures you into a rhythm, a set pace, a routine you begin to rely on. And once you're in that rhythm long enough, you stop looking around, you stop being curious, you stop preparing for the unexpected, and slowly the world changes around you. Competitors get smarter, challenges evolve, new technologies emerge, but because you're locked into your way, you don't see the change happening until it hits you like a storm. People don't lose in life or leadership because they aren't smart or talented. They lose because they failed to adapt, and often they didn't fail to adapt because they didn't care. They failed because they didn't realize they had become predictable in how they think, predictable in how they solve problems, predictable in how they respond to stress, to opportunity, to conflict, and that predictability becomes a pattern others can exploit. If life knows what you'll do next, it can move 2 steps ahead of you before you even lift your foot. In today's fast-paced world, agility matters more than tradition. Reinvention matters more than routine. What worked last year might get you laughed at this year. What made you successful in one phase of your life can make you irrelevant in the next. And the scariest part is predictability doesn't show up with warning signs. It doesn't announce itself. It sneaks in quietly. It hides behind the mask of structure, of stability, of this is how I've always done it. And while you're relying on yesterday's tactics, someone else is out there rewriting the rules. Not because they have better resources, but because they refuse to stand still. You can't lead, grow, or thrive if you're playing by old rules in a new game. Being predictable may feel safe, but in reality, it's like walking into battle with a blueprint that everyone has seen. If your moves can be forecasted, you're not leading. You're being led by your past. Change doesn't wait for you to be ready. Disruption doesn't send you an alert. And the longer you stay predictable, the easier it is for someone or something to take you by surprise. It's not during peaceful, calm moments that people discover who they really are. It's during crisis. It's when everything goes wrong, when plans fall apart, when support systems break down, and when there's no one left to blame or lean on. That's when true strength is revealed. Crisis doesn't create your character, it reveals it. It pulls back the curtain and shows you what you've really built, what you really believe, and what you're truly capable of under pressure. In the face of adversity, excuses become irrelevant. Titles don't matter. Past achievements can't shield you. It's only your mindset, your resilience, and your ability to stay calm in the chaos that determines what happens next. When defenses fall, whether it's in war, in business, or in life, there's no time to mourn what was lost. There's only time to respond, and in that split second, everything comes down to one thing: preparation of the mind. Physical strength, resources, even strategy. They are important, but they're nothing without mental agility. Crisis forces people to choose between 2 paths, retreat or respond, most freeze, most panic, most look around for someone to save them. But the few who rise, who take action, who hold their ground and lead forward despite the uncertainty, those are the ones who have already prepared for this moment in silence, long before the world fell apart. In crisis, people revert to their deepest programming. If you've trained yourself to seek comfort, you'll collapse the moment things get hard. But if you've trained yourself to stay calm under pressure, to solve problems instead of react emotionally, to focus instead of fear, then crisis becomes your proving ground. It's not about being fearless. It's about facing fear and still moving. That's what separates those who survive from those who lead. The battlefield may be different for everyone. Some face economic collapse. Others face personal heartbreak, betrayal, loss, or failure. But the principle remains the same. Adversity tests your foundation. Strength is not the absence of struggle. It's the ability to remain composed when everything you built is under attack. It's the discipline to keep thinking clearly when chaos screams for your attention. It's knowing that you may not control the circumstances, but you do control how you respond to them. True strength isn't loud. It doesn't need to prove anything. It shows up quietly, in actions taken without applause, in decisions made with clarity when others are paralyzed by confusion. It's the steady hand when others tremble, the deep breath when others panic, the focused direction when others run in circles. Crisis doesn't care about your comfort. It doesn't arrive when you're ready. But when it does arrive, it gives you the rare opportunity to see who you are without filters, without expectations, without distractions. It strips away everything temporary and reveals everything permanent. Your discipline, your mindset, your values, your courage. It forces you to look in the mirror and ask yourself, what now? And in that moment, there's no hiding, no pretending, no faking confidence. There's only truth. Innovation isn't about tools, technology, or access to the latest resources. It's about the way you think. It's a mindset, a lens through which you see the world differently from everyone else. Some people believe innovation only belongs to the geniuses, the wealthy, or the elite, but that's a myth. Innovation belongs to the curious. It belongs to those who are dissatisfied with good enough. It belongs to the people who look at a problem and refuse to accept that there's only one way to solve it. When everyone else sees limits, the innovative mind sees opportunity. When others are frozen by uncertainty, the innovative individual starts experimenting, taking risks, asking better questions. What separates those who create change from those who react to it is the ability to challenge assumptions. Most people live their lives based on inherited ideas, rules passed down by tradition, expectations placed upon them by others, systems built by someone else. And they follow those rules not because they're the best path, but because they're the most familiar. But innovation doesn't live in familiarity. It lives in the unknown. It's born the moment you stop asking what's the right answer and start asking what if there's a better way. Innovation begins when you no longer accept the way things have always been. The greatest breakthroughs in history didn't come from people who had more resources. They came from people who had more vision, people who were willing to look foolish, people who didn't wait for permission. People who risked being misunderstood. Innovation isn't neat or perfect. It's messy. It's often met with resistance, doubt, and even ridicule. But those who carry the mindset of innovation understand that the process matters more than the praise. They're driven not by applause, but by purpose. They'd rather be effective than accepted. They'd rather fail forward than stay stuck in comfort. Being innovative means constantly asking better questions. It means turning frustration into fuel. It means refusing to let setbacks define the boundaries of what's possible. When things fall apart, most people look for what's broken. The innovative mind looks for what can be built. When systems fail, most people freeze. The innovative mind starts designing something better. It's not about finding an easy answer, it's about being relentless in the pursuit of a new one. The world doesn't need more people following directions. It needs more people writing new ones. Innovation doesn't always show up as a grand invention or a world-changing idea. Sometimes it's how you lead your team through crisis. Sometimes it's how you rebuild your life after loss. Sometimes it's how you find a way to keep going when everything says stop. It's in how you respond, how you adapt, and how you look at the same problems through a different lens. It's in the willingness to tear down what's safe in order to build what's strong. It's the refusal to let predictability be your ceiling. It's the internal belief that no matter what has failed, you are not done creating. Leadership is not about reacting to what already happened. It's about anticipating what might come next. The most effective leaders don't wait for problems to arrive at their doorstep. They train themselves to see the signs others miss, to read between the lines, to ask the hard questions before the pressure demands answers. Anticipation is a rare skill because it requires discipline. It demands a long view in a short-term world. It's easy to get caught up in immediate tasks, deadlines, and distractions, but true leadership means lifting your eyes from the present and focusing on what's ahead. It means being aware not just of what is, but of what could be. Leaders who anticipate are constantly scanning the horizon, not because they live in fear, but because they're committed to responsibility. They don't guess. They study, they observe, they prepare. They don't simply hope things will work out. They design paths that lead to sustainable outcomes. The difference between reacting and anticipating is the difference between being on defense and offense. Defensive leaders scramble. They make decisions based on urgency and fear. But those who anticipate move strategically. They act with clarity, even under pressure, because they've already considered the possible outcomes before the moment demands a decision. Anticipation also means understanding human behavior. Great leaders don't just watch the data. They watch people. They pay attention to energy, to motivation, to resistance. They know that challenges don't always show up as numbers or spreadsheets. Sometimes they show up as silence in a meeting, a sudden change in morale, or a subtle shift in performance. Anticipating the future isn't just about predicting trends. It's about being deeply connected to the present. It requires being fully awake to what's going on now in order to recognize what's likely to unfold next. In a crisis, leaders who have practiced anticipation are already several steps ahead. They're not asking, "What do we do now?" They're asking, "What did we plan for?" While others panic, they execute. While others scramble, they stabilize. That preparation isn't just technical, it's emotional. Anticipating the future means building emotional endurance. It means preparing yourself mentally for the hard days, for the resistance, for the loneliness that sometimes comes with leadership. Because the reality is, most people won't see what you see until they feel it. By then, it's often too late. Leadership grounded in anticipation creates cultures of trust. Teams feel safer under someone who isn't constantly surprised by adversity. There's a calmness in leadership that is proactive. It inspires confidence, not because it promises ease, but because it prepares for challenge. It's not about knowing every answer, it's about asking the right questions early enough to shape the outcome. Anticipation fuels agility. It gives leaders the ability to pivot, adjust, and move forward even when conditions change. It ensures that progress continues not by accident, but by intention. And while the world reacts to disruption, the leaders who anticipate are the ones who shape the future, while others are still trying to understand the past. In moments of shock, when the world around you collapses or spins out of control, you are faced with a choice that defines your identity. Crisis has a way of stripping everything away. The titles, the comfort, the illusion of control. What you're left with is raw decision. Not a decision about what happens next externally, but a decision about who you will become in the face of it. There are moments when nothing around you makes sense, when everything you trusted has failed, and it's in those moments that your true self is revealed. You can't fake strength when you're under pressure. You can't pretend to be composed when the ground beneath you has vanished. That's when identity is forged, not in your words, but in your actions. You don't get to choose what storms come your way, but you do get to choose how you walk through them. And that choice creates a shift. Will you be the person who breaks apart or the one who breaks through? Will you fall into fear or rise with focus? These moments don't announce themselves with preparation time. They arrive uninvited, sudden, often brutal. And still, in the middle of the noise, you are the one who decides who you will become. That is the most powerful truth about adversity. It hands you back the pen to write your story. Every collapse, every defeat, every painful disruption carries a hidden door. That door doesn't open with luck. It opens with courage, with clarity, with ownership. You must choose to see yourself not as a victim of circumstance, but as a creator of response. Not as someone waiting to be saved, but as someone stepping forward to lead, even if it's only yourself at first. The greatest transformations happen not when everything is going well, but when everything seems to be falling apart. It's in that chaos that your next version of self is born. Not the reactive self, but the intentional one. In the middle of crisis, most people look outward for direction. They ask, "What should I do?" But the more powerful question is, "Who must I become?" Because if you can become stronger, wiser, calmer, more strategic, then what you do will naturally align with that version of you. Your decisions will follow your identity. The problem is, many people try to take new actions with an old mindset. They try to move forward with a backward identity, and that never works. Shock will always force change. The only question is whether you will allow it to break you into fragments of fear, or mold you into someone who leads forward. Shock clarifies what matters. It removes the non-essential. It highlights what you truly value, what you truly believe, and how deep your strength runs. There is no more pretending. There is no more waiting. It's just you and the moment demands a decision, not about the world, but about your own reflection. Who are you now, not when things are easy, but when they're hard? That is where the real you is revealed, shaped, and tested.